I will tell you that, as Councilman Lowry already told you, we already had a charter commission in place. It was elected, was it, Myron, in 2006 it was elected?
Yes. How many signatures were necessary?
40,000 signatures, I think, petition signatures were signed and submitted. The people bypassing the elected officials to get a charter commission up and running. There was a charter commission election in 2006. Myron Lowry was elected and also chosen as chair. And then they deliberated for 2 years, or a year and a half anyway, on various proposals. And there was a slate of proposals. One of them was term limits. Another one was instant runoff voting. Shay Flynn, who I think might have been, was he a city councilman back then, or was he? No. All right, so he was a former student, and he and I brought it to the Charter Commission. He later went on to become a city councilman. The Charter Commission deliberated, unanimously endorsed it. It went to the voters in the 2008 election, and at that point, Johnnie Turner enters the picture.
Okay, we waged an extensive campaign. I think I'm picking up where you
Yes.
Because of the same reasons that we're supporting, that I'm supporting it now. And when I say I know I'm not alone. There may be some of my colleagues, all of whom I respect very highly, very capable, but I think the premise is more about, less about them and more about the people. And the NAACP we worked very hard to get this passed. And I think another thing that we perhaps have thought but haven't voiced is that change is difficult. People are afraid of change. You're more comfortable with the shoes that you've worn for 2 years than the new ones you put on. So this is expected. These are like growing pains. We just have to deal with the problems and find a solution to try to work around that. But getting back to the NAACP's participation, as I said earlier, we worked very hard to get this passed. We, for the same reasons, the same arguments that we're using now. It was less expensive. We were having too many candidates who were winning with less than a majority vote. And there was one of the arguments, and I may be getting ahead of myself, is that you can't put a price on democracy. Well, if you elect somebody to office who is incapable, who may have other reasons that aren't known, they can pass some bills that'll be much more expensive than the cost it would be for having the instant runoff voting in place. So the people voted for this, 71%. I mean, 71%. That's almost, 2/3 of the populace. And if they did that, and we know that during that interim until this point, there were folk that didn't want it implemented. So another part to this argument, if they didn't want it implemented, it must be good. That's another way to look at it. And so it's not fair for all of the work, all of the thought that went into getting this passed because we felt it was the best thing for the people. Less expensive, more, and this is really important, more voter participation. It has been alluded to earlier that in one runoff election, 5% of the people came out. 5%. 95% stayed home. Look at it that way. So from that point of view, plus, as all has already been stated, it's harder on the poor, it's on the elderly, on the sick, the disabled, all of those categories whose voices weren't being heard because of the variables that kept them from coming on for the runoff. So that is how we got started, and that's why I am here today, because I know all of the thought, as Councilman, former Mayor Myron Lowry has indicated, and the chair, he knows more about this than any of us. And if Myron says it's a good thing, I believe Myron. It's a good thing. Because he's been there all the time, all the way. He knows all the ramifications that I don't know. But I trust him. And because I trust him, And because I know how I felt when we were trying to make it more equal, more people, our citizens involved, it's the right thing to do.
So in 2008, we celebrate our victory thinking everything's going to work out. At the time, the Democrats controlled the state legislature and therefore the local election commission. 2010 comes, it's the Tea Party wave. Republicans take over the state legislature and therefore the local election commission under state law. They hire a new election administrator named Richard Holden. Now locals here, they're actually, out-of-towners are almost outnumbering locals here, but locals here, anybody remember the name Richard Holden? Anyone around long enough to remember that name? Okay. You Google Richard Holden and you Google election problems and you will get all kinds of hits. There were all kinds of controversies during his reign. He took the position that the election machines couldn't handle it. We kept trying to point out that there were machines virtually identical in North Carolina that were using instant runoff voting. He didn't let the facts get in the way of a good story, and that continued. 2011 city council elections come, they don't implement. Now, at the same time, the election commission was also working with me, or supposedly, to go to a voter-verified paper trail, which was another election reform that we thought was very important. And they kept assuring us, we're going to get there, we're going to get to voter-verified paper trail, and when we do, it'll be much easier to use the machines to do IRV. So if you'll just be patient with us and work with us, we'll do it. And, like an idiot, I trusted them. And, years went by and it still didn't get implemented. 2015 comes around and we're still not implementing. We begin to think seriously about litigation. One of the problems, though, is if we bring too much attention to it, then the Tea Party legislature in Nashville might just shut the whole thing down, right? Which Aaron can talk about. Almost happened this past year. But fortunately, 2016 comes along, and we have a new election administrator, Linda Phillips, who comes from out of town. Unlike Holden, she actually had experience running elections. She's smart and she's honest, and she says, look, there's no reason why we couldn't be using these machines. I know how to do it. It is the law. We're going to do it. And so now, finally, it's announced in 2017 that we're ready to implement in the 2019 City Council election. So as soon as the City Council hears that, they think, oh, this is actually going to happen? You mean the election system that we're comfortable under might actually be changed to be more competitive? Screw that. We're not going to let that happen. And so they start talking about passing resolutions that will place repeal measures on the ballot. So we mobilize. We actually formed Save IRV Memphis. There wasn't a Save IRV Memphis. There was just a Yes on 5 organization back in 2008. And a grassroots group comes together. Aaron gets involved. And we do everything we can to lobby the city council not to do this thing. We got a lot of good earned media. We did email and call your council campaign. We had hundreds of emails and phone calls coming into the city council. We met with them. We lobbied with them. On the day of the vote, we had 100 angry people in city council waving signs, going up one after another. It was as though we didn't exist. It made absolutely no impression whatsoever. The city council unanimously voted for it. And I will tell you that I met with each one of those city council members. And the high-minded reasons that they're giving now were not the reasons for their vote. The super district people said it's not going to affect us in 2019, so we don't care. We'll do whatever the single-member district people say, so just talk to them. The single-member district people, with the exception of Edmund Ford, who had, I'm a math genius and I'm going to explain why instant runoff voting mathematically does everything, is the Antichrist, and the 666 and the horned beast will rise and the oceans will fall if we have instant runoff voting, except for him, who is a bit of a zealot. Every one of the single-member district people, all they wanted to talk about was how was it going to affect them? How was it going to affect their next election? If we had had IRV in my last election, would I have won or not? That's all they cared about. And in the public debate, they were publicly on the record saying, we don't like instant runoff voting because two challengers could collude. They used the word collude. This was, I think this is even before collusion became the big word, I don't know, with Russia and Trump. Two challengers could collude and say, I'll tell my voters to be, to vote for you second, and you tell your voters to vote for me second, and that way we'll take out the incumbent. Which tells me a couple of things. First of all, they think that's cooperative campaigning is a bad thing. They think it's a bug, right? We think it's a feature. Second of all, they don't really understand how IRV works because they don't understand that incumbents could also use that kind of cooperative campaigning strategy if they wanted to. So there's no reason why incumbents would be particularly disadvantaged under that system. But third, most importantly, it tells me that what was really on their mind is incumbency protection. Not the public welfare, but incumbency protection. So we get 100 people there. They ignore us right down the line. They go ahead and they vote for not one, but eventually 2 different ways of killing instant runoff voting. And then I'll leave it to you.
So it was about a year ago when I ran into the Steve Mulroy guy on Facebook, and I said, I kind of like this IRV thing. Let's meet for a coffee. And we met for a coffee, and here we are now. They didn't just ignore us in December of 2017. They mischaracterized us, right? We had a diverse group of supporters, diverse speakers. But the city council attorney, when he read off a list of the people who had spoken on this issue, read off a list of people that he perceived to be only Caucasian. So from the very get-go, this entire initiative has been mischaracterized by the city council and those who support it. And here's part of that mischaracterization. During the early initiative, when we were lobbying the city council, the members were saying frequently, we just want to give the voice to the voters. We want to give the voters another chance. We want to let the voters have a look at this. They were couching it in the language of voter education and voter opportunity, where right after the vote, we discovered that the city council was paying a lobbying firm to, among other things, lobby a state senator from Roane County, way out in East Tennessee, to co-sponsor legislation that would outlaw IRV statewide. And, I confirmed this with the lobbying firm themselves. And the day after I called the lobbying firm, I got a phone call from the Memphis City Council attorney. And he asked me if he picked up the phone, and he said he's Alan Wade, and he asked me if he said, can I help you? I said, you called me, man, what's up? And he said, well, I understand that you're calling my employee. He was referring to the lobbying firm as his employee. I said, well, I spoke to them to confirm some of the work they're doing, which they're bound to do under tenancy ethics, regulations. And he said, well, you can't call them, they're my employee. I said, dude, I can talk to who I want to. He said, you can kiss my backside, but he didn't say backside. And this conversation got a lot more aggressive as time went on, and he said that I was possibly liable for a tort, which is like a legal harm, that he was putting me on notice. So he started using legalistic language with me, perhaps to chill my political expression. And at the end of the discussion, I gave him an out, and I said, did you really mean all of that as legal warnings? And he said, no. Just man-to-man conversation. Just man-to-man conversation. So that's when I got personally interested in this. It got personal. So we went to Nashville. We took a group of people. Tom met us there. Thank you very much for that. And we lobbied a lot of the state, or the House local subcommittee, the Senate Government Operations Committee, and they did end up pulling it, so it never made it through committee, and that legislation died. We had a statewide letter writing campaign. We were really working these people, and it worked. So that was kind of a big early success for us. At this time, we started to think about how we were going to ramp things up for this November. And we were very fortunate to have a very good opportunity for voter contact in the May election. So we had a poll working operation. We got people out there handing out flyers. We started looking for events to hand flyers out to people and to inform people. We got our Facebook going. We did some social media outreach. We started building and reaching out. We had a canvassing day. We started doing all that typical campaign stuff. But it was still kind of shadowed over by the county primary and then the August election, which was very hotly contested. And then the air cleared after the August election, and we started getting into really full campaign mode, which is where we are now. Now, before that, in that August election, we had 3 city council members who actually won county commission seats. And we had tried, in terms of good government to say, hey, how about you not pull 2 public paychecks for 3 months and pledge to resign if you win in August? Well, of course
So
they
that
couldn't.
we could use the November.
Well, I mean, and one beneficial offshoot of that would have been that in the special election that would have been held to replace the 2 single-member seats, Edmund Ford and Bill Morrison, their seats would have been on the November ballot in an IRV election. So we would have had an opportunity to test IRV in a limited capacity before citywide implementation in 2019. Perfect out for everybody. It was a really great opportunity. But they held tight. The chair of the city council claimed he had a legal memo stating that it was impossible for there to be a special election in November, whereas we did quite a bit of analysis ourselves using legal minds beyond my own and beyond Steve's even, and we found that it totally comported with state and local legislation to have a special election in November. So they opted to not do that, and they stalled. And they're currently still sitting on 2 paychecks. The first person has pledged to resign on November 1st. I assume Janice Fuller will be second and Ed Ford will be third. And the thing that, one of the through lines of this discussion is the holding on to power, right, and consolidating power. And I wouldn't be surprised if out of 2 of those 3 city council members who are resigning, that if at least 2 of them, if their successors were not their family members, I would be surprised. I make that call now. That of the 3 people who were elected in August, 2 of them will be succeeded by family members. So think about that as we're talking about consolidation of power, fear of new voices, fear of new choices. And that takes us to where we are now, where they are sinking to incredible depths to undermine what we're doing, resorting to not only misinformation of their own voters, but intimidation of their opposition. There is a local shock jock, false pastor who has a television show, who is involved in the opposition, and he read out the home addresses of both myself, where my wife and 2 children sleep, but also John Merrick, who's also a member of our organization. So they're willing to go to that depth to dox us, to also read out my phone number on air. But the funny thing was, most of the phone calls I got were calling Thaddeus Matthews a jerk. But they're willing to resort to sink to those lows to outdo us. And they're telling the voters that the 3rd referendum isn't about voting at all. The literature that they're distributing, which is funded in large part by Councilwoman Robinson, is stating that the 3rd referendum is about eliminating special elections, which is completely and utterly false. So not only are they trying to intimidate me personally, and threaten the physical security of my family, they're willing to misinform vulnerable voters in Memphis. I met with every single voter I talked to who has heard about this. Every single one, when I tell them the plain language of the referendums, becomes a no vote. Every single one. That's why I'm in this, because the truth is out there, right? X-Files. You trust nobody who's from the city council, and you vote no on everything in November.
Well, Aaron reached out to me first, and he was giving me my family history. And he was saying that when my father, Russell Sugarmon, first ran for county commission, he ran, you can correct me because you know. Okay.
Citywide
it was a
clerk's
county
office, yeah.
position.
City position.
It was county commission, I thought.
Okay, Russell Sugarman ran for what
He
I believe was
ran,
a city
okay, for
commission, right?
office.
Yeah.
And so the position was an elected position. He was the only black, and there were 4 whites.
4 or 5.
And so then what happened was he got, of course, majority of the black vote. And so at that time it was a majority, meaning 50 plus 1. So it went to a runoff election. The runoff election meant that the top 2 candidates would run against each other. And of course, at that time, the blacks supported my dad and the whites supported the other candidate, and he lost. And so at that point, I started thinking.
Can I step in?
Sure.
When he filed to run, it was a plurality seat, winner take all. The majority with runoff was instituted specifically to disenfranchise Erika's father.
And this was back when Memphis or Shelby County was majority white. So the runoff would disadvantage African Americans. So it's a different dynamic now in 2000.
I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
Okay. And so after Aaron was talking about the history of my father and what he went through and things like that, so I became intrigued. And then it became an issue, certain individuals saying it's a black-white issue. I said, no, it's a wrong-right issue. Because if you look at, let's say, the mayor's race, you had 3 black candidates and you had 1 white candidate. If you want to go there, let's go there. And so I said, now, look at this race. The black candidate split the black votes, and then the white candidate won. So if you make an argument for it, think about it. If we had ranked voting, it probably would have been a different outcome. So let's not even go there. And so many times in Memphis, we make it about race as opposed to the issues. My hope for this city, my city that I grew up in, which my parents and ancestors, supported, that we get away from race and look at what's right and what's wrong. And what the city council is doing is just simply wrong. And so at that point, I said, yes, I'm all in it. And Attorney Mulroy, you have my heart's regards, because it is not easy. You should hear how they talk about him, out there. I was like, boy, you have to have thick skin. But he does it because he cares about we care about this city. And hopefully that will break down those barriers so the young people, the young progressives can come and take over. Because I'm a senior citizen, guys. It's hard. This is my first time running for office. I came in second with 10,500 votes. I'm going to run again, but I want to pass the baton to the young people, and that is my hope and dream for our city.
Erika, tell them about your most recent election and how the vote got split and what happened in your city council race.
Okay, in the city council race I ran for, it was a plurality. So the person who won was backed by corporate America, okay? And he did not campaign at all. He said, in fact, he was not going to go to any forums at all until after the election. Well, the rest of the candidates were progressives. And so we were out there campaigning, knocking on doors and talking to people and so forth. He won with 35% of the vote. I came in second, 10,500 or 23% of the vote. Now, having said that, if it had been a situation where it was a majority and we had to go on and fight again, it would have been this bourgeoisie and myself. Guess what? He would have won. I don't have deep pockets. He outspent me 5-1. Not only that, he was an incumbent. They had appointed 6 days prior. So again, let's level the playing field so people, like the average person, can run for office. And people understand it's a majority. When you run, it's a majority, 50+1. Then it goes to ranked voting. People have the idea it's ranked voting off the top. No, it's majority. And don't we want the majority person to win our races?
So do you think if there had been IRV in your race, what result do you think would have occurred?
It would have been a different story, because the young lady who ran against me was also progressive, and she had 18% of the votes. And so more than likely, I would have been 1, she 2, and then in her 1, I'll be 2, and things of that nature. He would have been 4th or 5th down the line, because we had quite a few progressives in that race.
Who's he?
Ford Canal.
Ford Canal. I hate throwing people under the bus, okay, but since he Ford Canal, and he went. The thing about the Undertaker, but think about in the black community, which he didn't do, which was strategic on his side, was to go as Ford Canal. That's not his full name. It's Joseph Ford Canal. So blacks are saying, in the Ford running? I said, oh my God. I said, I guess you have to be an Undertaker to win a race in this city.
Ford is a big political family here.
And the thing that's important to note about that election, Super District 9, the super districts in Memphis were created to create some sort of racial balance, where you, of the 6 super districts, you ostensibly have 3 African American and 3 white. And Erika was running in the section that is traditionally 3 white. And I believe with instant runoff voting, she would have won that seat hands down.